we're on the Behind the Grow podcast with my very special guest and friend today, Alexandre Gauthier. He is the VP of R&D at Origine Nature and the Director of Cultivation, although he says he's not, but the internet says he is. So I'm just going to say he is. And in my opinion, it's one of the most beautiful commercial grows I've ever seen in my life. I've been to a lot of facilities. I've seen a lot of rooms and a lot of stuff. But yours is one of the most impressive. And to be fair, in this world of growers, you are one of the most impressive people I've ever met. I don't know if I ever told you that to your face. I try not to boost your ego any more than it already needs to be boosted. But you have impressed me more times than most. And you're also a super funny and nice guy. And I'm really glad that you're on the show. And for many people in Canada, you do not need to be introduced. But I do have viewers all over the world. And in fact, even all over the world, you don't need to be introduced. You've spoken in so many conferences around the world. You've really done a lot of work. So welcome to the show, Alex.
Well, thank you, and thank you for all the kind words. I don't know how I can top it
You
off.
don't have to. You don't have to say. I'll say you're great. You could just say thank you. It's really easy, you know.
So thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be on your podcast, and it's a pleasure to have you as a friend and know the Garden Culture magazine team, and to be able to travel the world with you
Yes.
guys also, because we always
Yeah.
see you at conference everywhere. So yeah, no, just thank you. And yes, I'm not the director of production anymore. I used to be. It's
Update.
a typo in my signature that needs to be updated. We now have Adam Stolting, that is our director of production, and he's doing a great job at it.
Sure. So, do you remember where we met, you and I?
The first time?
That we really met. I may have bumped into you once or twice, but where we sat down and exchanged words and silent jokes on a piece of paper.
It was definitely at a conference, I think at a Canada Talk.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
Canada
again, the
Exchange.
Canada Talks are wonderful. I've been to many. I love them. So if I say anything now about what we were talking about, I don't see if you remember what we were talking about because it's even funnier. And I didn't know you. I had no idea who you were. You were just a dude. You could have been anybody. You could have been from another province. I had no idea. I sat down beside you. This is the seat that was the last seat left was beside you. You know, no. But I sat down anyway. So we're sitting at a Canada Talk. I look at the guy beside me, and it's you. And someone's talking, so it doesn't matter who's talking. Doesn't even matter what kind of talk it was. 95% of the stuff they say is amazing. But the guy up there was, sometimes when you have these talks and people are talking about what they do, there can be a level of bias that skews the reality of what you do. You agree with this?
Sorry, that there's a degree of
Well,
reality
when they're
that I
talking
didn't
about
catch
their
it.
own business or what they do, so they're talking about them, kind of. The bias can make it so that, if you really know the subject well, you may every now go like, oh, I don't know if I agree with that. I'm sure their company agrees with that, but I don't know. And then somehow there's a piece of paper that came down and we wrote bullshit-o-meter. And then you looked over, haha, and you smiled, and then like 2 minutes later, you lean over in the desk, and you been a big spike in whatever he just said. Obviously, you didn't agree with, and I instantly liked you, and then I got a chance to talk to you, and I'm gonna say a couple of nice things again about you. So I hope you don't mind. In the United States and in Canada, one of the biggest differences I've noticed in commercial cannabis facilities is how guarded each person is with their information. You are a 99.5 on 100 of openness. You will tell anyone your SOPs. You will share, at least in my experience, you'll share information openly about your business operations. And I've always really liked that about you and David and the way that Origin philosophy. You talk to a successful American commercial facility about how they grow, you might as well they won't tell you anything. These are secrets. These are important valuable trade secrets that are and again, I get it, I suppose. But something you said to me once, which I also said, wow, like that's, and I've repeated this. In fact, I was just on another person's podcast today, and I said this about your company, that you share all this information because for you, it's not about the information, it's about the team, it's about the people you work with. That's what makes you successful. Yes, the right genetics. Yes, but anybody could figure out the right genetics, and the right nutrients or how many drybacks per day or having 5 firewalls so nothing can ever go wrong. All that is duplicatable. It's on a piece of paper, but duplicating people is impossible.
Absolutely. Well, it's like the example of when we met. It was back in an era where I would say bro science was dominating. And it's a
Yeah.
little bit also if you're guarding, I would say a lot of your cultivation techniques is you're a little bit believing as well in what I call green goblins, right? If you take cannabis as a plant and let's say you look into tomatoes, a lot of the basic, how to grow tomatoes or how to grow a lot of plants is readily available. Growers are going to share. There's very little that can be considered an actual secret, right? Or an actual competitive advantage. I do like to educate and share the knowledge with everybody because at Origin Nature, we firmly believe in the Canadian industry. We're the founding member of the AKIC, so we always believed in getting the industry together, working as a whole, becoming, the professionals that we're supposed to be, uniting to put Canada in the right position as the number one exporter. And, all of this has worked. You can see it definitely in Germany with the presence of Quebec
Yeah.
cannabis. But yes, there is no secret sauce. It's a plant that reacts to stimulus, and it's all about how you train your team, how your team is going to diagnose the issue, how they understand the process, how they're going to follow the process, and how that process is repeatable. So if even if you have a good process, if you don't have the right team behind it, it will lead to nothing. So, as you say, the real key and the real competitive advantage of any LP is their team.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna come back to this subject again because I think it's really interesting, and there's a really interesting story behind your company's team and how amazing they are in Quebec. But I first want to go back before we met, and I've read some clips, and I've heard some interviews of you, and I've talked to you that you have, what was it to say, when you were 20 or 21, your favorite hobby was to draw grow rooms out, designing a grow rooms before you design when you're at home with one light. So when did you have put up your first light? When what how did that happen? And I'd be curious even to know, like, kind of like, what nutrient did you use? What strain did you grow? The first one. So when was that?
So, the first time basically what happened is so I was in Europe, I was in France, and I mean, I was a legacy salesman, as you can say. And at one point, the idea germinated in her head that, hey, it's a plant. Why are we fattening up the street corner mafioso when we could probably be growing that plant? And I gotta say, it is to this day probably the most terrible setup I have ever seen
I
in my
put my
life.
first against your first, and I guarantee I'll win for worst setup.
So our setup was a wooden pallet. We then use taped together cardboard to create what would be a
I didn't have the
tent
10.
in which we in which we put a 400-watt
I
HPS
used
light.
two spotlight halogen shop lights.
Okay, yeah,
I
so
win.
that
My weed was horrible.
well, we actually we popped a bunch of seed. I remember there was the ice back then, White
Okay.
Widow, some of the great classic, but it was stinking up the entire apartment building, and to this day we have no idea how we didn't get
Oh,
arrested
listen,
for that.
been
Uh,
there.
so that was the first grow, and it actually gave out something decent. And so it made us believe in growing. At that moment, of course, I was in Europe, so the criminal I would say penalties were a little bit too heavy. I didn't like it. I went back to Canada, and in Canada, that's when I was able to get my first medical license as a medical
How long ago
patient.
was
I
that?
discovered so my first license was probably in 2013,
Okay,
2014.
okay. Sure. I forget how long ago it was that they allowed for the first medical permits. I had other friends who, yeah,
2001.
that was a long time ago.
You can trace the entire history of cannabis. Before 2001, you had the brickweed, and then slowly but surely the chronic and the crippy
Well,
came. The crippy was coming from Miami. The Cubans were growing it in Florida. Chronic was coming from West Coast, and then 2001 happened, and then you flip the script, and Canada was starting to supply everything,
yeah.
and chronic and crippy,
Well, the
chronic was
M39's
still.
been prevalent in Quebec since the mid 90s, early 90s.
Yeah, but that was the outdoor grow. It wasn't anything like after
No, no,
2001.
no.
After 2000, like there was still product coming from the United States to Canada prior to 2001, I would say. After 2001 or maybe by 2003, there's no longer cannabis from the United States destined to be sold in
See,
Canada
for
that's
me,
entering the
I mean,
country.
I don't know if it's just an age thing or a time thing, because I remember specifically it was hash. It was hash, 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 hash everywhere. Then all of a sudden in the mid 80s, I don't know if it was that, well, I know exactly who it was. It was a guy from here who did the M39. And M39 in Friesland hit Quebec. And then all of a sudden there was weed, and it was good weed. And then you had because it was biker weed. And so they grew M39, so like 75-80%. And then you had what people call no every other strain basically that tasted different because M39 tastes like nothing. um and all the people I knew who grew, and their consortiums, they shipped to the US. None of them imported weed. I never knew any, and I never smoked any except for that Mexican brickweed, like that first came in the early days. But that there was never good weed that came into Canada. It was Canadian weed going to the US. And then when the shift happened, like especially when Michigan went legalized, that just shut every door. And Massachusetts made it even worse. Like then nothing from Canada went to the U.S. anymore. But I don't remember ever weed being grown in the U.S. other than California weed, and most of it California weed went across the U.S. It was BC weed that was the good stuff that we got. I don't remember ever buying or seeing or even hearing about imports of American weed that was good.
Well, there you go. With medical license also, it allowed people to become more expert and have controlled environment and have controlled grows that they're not about to lose every 6 months another, right? So I say cannabis is a plant that reacts to stimulus. The more you work on it, the more you're able to discover how you're going to steer and manage your cannabis plants, and that's why it became better product, right? But I do believe that, any country has the potential to grow good
Yeah.
weed, but what becomes important is the cost of production, and that's where Canada becomes a major player. It's because their natural resources are so prevalent, right? We're the
Oh, cheap
country
weed.
with the most natural resources, I think, per inhabitant. We barely pay for
Yeah.
water, electricity is almost nothing, and manpower is still a reasonable price, right? So when you combine that, that's why Canadian are so good at cannabis. It's not because they're magical,
I
plant
wish I could pull
whispers.
the picture. I'm gonna have the picture to put like edit now. Picture's gonna come in. When I went to your grow room the first time, and I've been again in a lot of grow rooms. I've seen some stuff out west, like some outdoor things that made me be like my jaw dropped. But my jaw dropped when I went in and saw that sage and sour 2 days before harvest. And I have never seen so much weight. I've seen pictures on the internet, but not even like the colas were like this, and they were not one or two. The whole fucking room was. This isn't normal production like values. Like I don't, people get close or like 2/3 of that, but that you guys have an exceptional yield per square foot in that place.
I would say nowadays there's a lot of people doing better
That's
than
what you.
us, especially with LEDs and under canopies. Like
They were
there's also the consistency of the product, right? Sage and Sour under HPS is a sativa. The buds are big, but they still consider, I would say, a little bit fluffy compared to the rock solid buds you can get under LED. So that does impact on weight, right? When we're talking actual metric, the room you saw was at best an 85 gram per square feet of dry trim flower, and you have guys popping some 150 gram per square feet of dry trim flower. And as far as bud size, I mean, there's definitely two tree growers out there in the states that
yeah,
that
but I haven't been in their rooms. I said I've seen some stuff on the internet that you're like, holy shit. But I said that it was pretty impressive either way. So back then you had started this garden. You were just in pots of cocoa in the beginning. Was it pretty simplified, or were you always a complicated, really into the details kind of guy?
Oh, I like complicated right away. Well, the first one was soil, but by the time I got back to Canada, got my license, I directly jumped into deep water recirculating hydroponics, the DWC, and I think a lot of people are in there. It was the same concept as the H2O current system, but before that
Right.
existed. So we were using what was it? It was shit.
You can just make your own.
No, it was available by General
Okay.
Hydroponics, but it was basically their setup. It was a
Yeah.
bucket with another little bucket, and you put not perlite,
Hydrogen. Yeah.
hydrotons in it, and we modified that system with a recirculating pump and a feeding pump, just like the
Yeah.
H2O current. But we basically came quickly to the conclusion that it produced way too much roots and everything clogs and you need gigantic pipes and which is exactly what they ended up doing. Very good results, but I jumped directly into that. But as I moved to the commercial and professional cannabis production, it's just
It's too
not a
much.
system that works on big scale, right?
Well, they
So
have come,
now I'm
but I wouldn't do it.
well, it's they. It depends on what the goal of the company is, what they're trying to do. If it's a system that works for them and they produce good cannabis that they can sell, then
Yeah.
perfect, right? But as far as efficiency, if we're talking big plants, definitely I like perlite, I like rock wool. Those are definitely the two medium I think are the best out there.
I guess all. I mean, again, I have some sort of question things I don't want to miss with you, but so one of them I'll get into it because you said it is the way you grow also surprised me. Now I have a friend in Montreal Cannabis. I've known this guy forever. He used to have a Cape Puss store here in Quebec. We were really good friends. He was my customer, and we see each other all the time. And I think it's you guys have a similar style. Was that the Dutch buckets with the perlite in Montreal Cannabis? They also it's just you guys, I think, have a like run the same.
Yeah, well, it's Rich and Mitch
Yeah,
Clement, the brothers. They are some of our mentors. They taught us the system. The Sage and Sour also, is in strong relation to that. So yeah, we learned a lot how
so
to grow in perlite from them, and then the system evolved based on years of professional work and advanced data taking, and we're now where we
yeah.
are.
And so you start clones in Rockwool, correct?
Hmm.
And
Well,
typically they're in there.
either rock. Yeah, can a cocoa plug also,
Okay.
but 14 days cloning.
But now,
Then
so
we're
I know
gonna.
you switched to Canna. So you in cocoa into Dutch buckets still? Are you just in cocoa, or did you change the way you guys grow?
No, no, no. There's Canna cocoa plugs,
Yeah, yeah.
right,
No,
for
no, I
the
know, I know. But
cloning.
then you go into a Rockwell cube
Yes, exactly.
for that's your veg time for the most part.
Well, the pre-veg we
All right.
call it, right? Because it's on rack. It's just in a 4425
Yeah.
Rockwell cube. We're gonna spend 10 to 15
Okay.
days there, and then we put it in the perlite pot.
So Dutch bucket.
It's gonna be, yeah, the Dutch
Rockwell.
bucket. It's gonna be a 12-liter Dutch bucket. We veg them for 3 days, and then we flip, and there you go. It's on to flowering.
Yeah. And you said typically in the aggressive drinking period, how many drybacks a day do you do?
Well, with perlite, we don't want to have too many dry bags, right? So I'm gonna have an overnight dry bag, but during the day, just like Rockwool would keep it Like the saturated level is pretty much the optimal level for the oxygen of roots, right? Versus water. So just like rock wool, if you don't dunk the rock wool, like let's say a 666 Hugo cube, if you dunk it completely, it goes to 3,000 gram. But if you feed it by the top, it's going to stay more around 1.8 to 2,000 gram. So that's about the perfect level. That's what they're designed for as far as aeration levels. With perlites, it's a little bit the same thing, right? So when we do perlite during the day, we're going to keep it at that sweet spot by doing very frequent fertigations.
What's very frequent? 30 all day on for 15 seconds off.
Hourly, hourly, hourly,
Huh?
hourly.
Okay. And how long do you turn it on for? An hour.
It varies on the size of the plants and the needs of the plants. There's no one size fit all
Yeah,
answer to
I
that.
meant in the aggressive feeding period, but all right, it's interesting because, like I said, I've never seen a professional or a commercial facility with when I walked in your system. I'm like, Jesus Christ! Again, I felt like I was transported back 20 years because I knew people were growing with these buckets, and Rich and other people who I knew were growing this way so long ago, and it seemed to be, something that I would never have thought of in a million years. Yeah. So that's really something. So I guess we'll come back to Origin Nature, and something again I think is really worth talking about is the company itself. I'd imagine that has a company philosophy has a lot to do with David, um, the owner, and I guess yourself, because you guys kind of feel like the 1-2 punch of the company anyway. Uh, just tell us a little bit about Origin and the four pillars. Don't rush over them because I think each one really is quite important. And it's the base philosophy, and not many companies have really ingrained philosophies like yours has.
Of course. So Origin Nature was founded in 2017, basically by our CEO, Dave Bow. Dave has a personal medical experience where his dad was in terminal phase, and he was prescribed opioids, and that would make him a zombie, right? And so he was lucky enough to get some cannabis cookies and he tried it, and his dad basically got some quality of life back for the time he had left, and that allowed Dave, for him, his dad was his best friend, so that allowed him to get some time with his best friend before the end, and he saw all the good that cannabis could do versus things that are being prescribed and some companies benefiting from, right? So that's how Origin Nature started. We got licensed in 2020. We're in Saint Agathe des Monts in Quebec, Canada. We started, there was 13 of us with 2,500 square meters because we're worldwide. I'm going to speak in meters. We're civilized, right? Um, and so that was phase one. With phase one, we were pumping out about 4.5 ton of product per year. We were founded on EOS principles by Gino Wickman, which entice knowing who we are and what we stand for. That's one of the key things that was instilled into us is that you can't fake identity and you need to have an identity. So, for example, Nike, when you go into their headquarters, you just step in there and the ambiance and seeing all the portraits of all the top athletes, you understand that they're there to perform. Their motto is crush the competition. And people that don't align with that will auto disqualify basically from the team. So that was the example. And so we needed to know who we are so we can tell upfront people who we are so they can decide themselves if they want to be part of this team. And so the four core values that we came up with is was through an exercise that we did with the entire leadership team to be sure that those were values that we identified with. And so that was passion, street smart, social consciousness, and family. So those are the four core pillars at Origin. And it is important to note that it is not necessarily your definition of those words, it's our definition of those words. You need to come to Origin to better understand those definitions. And basically, that's how we drive who we're going to hire, who we're going to promote, who we're going to do business with, how we do business. We have also a strong alignment where we try to get information from the bottom up instead of top down. So if you work at Origin, you participate at a minimum of one meeting per week where you are asked to be open and honest, identify issues, diagnose those issues, help improve, submit ideas for improvement. So we want everybody to participate to what Origin Nature is. Sorry. And with that alignment, it did resonate with us winning Canada Greatest Place to Work multiple years in a row. We're always around the 20th position. We're the only cannabis company that's been recognized with that award. It's one of the one we're the most proud of, and also very low turnover rate. So I say it's important for us that if you're gonna you spend 30 to 40% of your life at work. If you're going to spend most of that time at work, we might as well, make something out of it, make it valuable, make it interesting and fun to do, right? So we try to do that for our teams and we try to give them a lot of advantages also and make it worth their while to be at the Origin facility.
Nice. Well, in case anyone didn't get that, because it's very impressive, is that this company won top 20 company in, did you say in Canada or in Quebec? In Quebec.
It's in Canada. Well, we were 22nd, 25th, 27th, like it's always between 20 and 30.
Okay. In their category, which is number of employees, not industry, in Canada to work for. So, and I think you won a Quebec won a similar award for best companies in Quebec to work for. You've won
Yes,
a
we've been
couple.
recognized by Chamber of Commerce,
Yeah,
Innovation,
that's
etc.
yeah, that's not a small deal at all. That's said like you said, a thing to be most proud of. And when I went to the visit, I've gone twice to visit, and once we brought our with Celia and our editor Kat and me, and I remember Kat leaving and being like, "Oh my God, like everyone's so happy there." And when I went the first time, like Alex introduced me. It's not like one person; he introduced me to every single person, and it's always, you could feel they look up, they're engaged, happy. He knows everyone's name. I mean, probably he doesn't think that's impressive, but remembering 100 people's names can be hard. Um, like I said, you could really feel the energy there and the positivity, and yeah, it's a really pretty special place, I think, to work. And you guys should be pretty proud of yourselves. Now, you're doing quite well, the business, right? You guys are profitable. You're selling out. So
Yeah, well, we've been lucky to yes, been profitable and all the finances aligned and we're doing what a good business should be doing
okay,
and yeah,
and
so no,
and
we're knock on wood.
and I know that you have not restricted yourself to sell across. You sell almost exclusively in Quebec,
Only in
and
Quebec
then
currently
export.
and international.
Yeah.
So
So
Germany, UK, also Australia, Kenya. We're looking at opening other jurisdiction, Israel, etc.
yeah, I mean that's amazing too. Are you coming to MJ Biz next week?
I am not.
I am surprised. Uh, w-
Uh, really?
well, every event I go to, you weren't in Prague either, I suppose, but you go to a lot of events, you speak at a lot of events. You spoke at MJ Biz before, did you not, last year?
No, I never,
Mhm.
no, never spoke at MJ Biz. I mean, let's be open and honest. MJ Biz is a great time to have fun. But as far as actual ROI, especially for Canadian
Yeah, yeah,
companies, like we've been 5 years in a row, right? Like the reality is it's federally illegal in the United States. And it's a big party, so it's great to go out with the team once in a while. but currently we don't think that there's the right value for the Origin Nature team to be
That makes
going to MJ Biz. So we're going to focus more on
Yeah,
Europe.
and then you'll be at ICBC and Mary Jane and the show in Dusseldorf? What's that one called?
Uh, uh,
I
uh,
just met the owners of that show. I should have their card on my table. Anyway,
I don't remember the name, but I know there's one, but I don't
yeah, yeah.
remember the name.
I have
Sorry.
his card here. I met him in Prague. Really nice guy, actually. Um, yeah, that makes sense for MJ Biz, and I know it's smaller than it has been, and I think it's gonna, I don't say unfortunately, it's just it's a good party, like you said, but for me, it's an amazing event. I get to, in terms of networking, um, so much potential business there. But then again, I sell advertising and magazines, and you guys sell cannabis, so it's I totally get the
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah, and it's not one that I necessarily look forward to, just with the political climate and all right now. I mean, I don't um mind going to the U.S. so much, but Vegas is not my favorite town. And your next trip, once you'll be going to the show in BC, I would imagine in January to grow
Yeah.
up.
Next trip is Grow Up Vancouver. We're going to be defending our position as the Canadian Championship Cup winner from last year. We'll see if we can make it in the top three. There's so much good product going around these days that, we would be lucky to be in the top three this year again.
Did you guys enter in the Karma Cup? And what's your feelings on who won the Karma Cup this year?
So we did enter the Karma Cup. We did not win anything. I think that Vasco Cannabis deserved their win. He put out some great product. He worked hard on it. Shout out to Vasco Cannabis for all the wins. There was a lot of good product out there, and I think that the judge did a good job of identifying at least the top five in each category, right? Even if only the top three were recognized, we did. Some of us got lists of that were more completes after. So yeah, no, it was a great event. Karma Cup really tried to do it. I do prefer the format where product is put in the Ontario market for people to go vote. But we do with what we have, and no, I say shout out to all the winner. They all
And
deserved it.
and what about the idea of working with a lab and then you identify cannabinoids, terpenes, and everything, some things that are physical that you could check off, and it's not left to somebody necessarily tasting it, or it's weighted on two sides. So someone can taste it and give it a 1 to 10 vote, and then it goes through the computer for everything else. So we know the cannabinoid profile, we know the terpenes, and that's really what weights how it's going to win within its category. If you're looking for, you don't
No,
like that.
no, no, no. COAs are never enough to determine
Okay,
anything.
but a combined score based on testing and human testing.
Well, there's to be honest, but I don't. Who cares about the COA? It doesn't matter. The human tasting is the only thing that counts. I don't. If everybody in the room likes that weed, I do not care whether it's 10 or 20% or 30% THC. I don't care if it's 1, 3, 5, 10% terpene. It doesn't matter. People like it, right? So, it, those are all numbers, and at the end of the day, that's why people keep saying stop shopping based on percentage. So note that input, I think, is not necessarily tasting should always be king, right? That's how you do university studies,
Well,
right?
same thing if you think about wine or anything else that matters. We don't buy a bottle of wine because it's 17% alcohol. Yeah,
Exactly. So,
it's interesting though. But the reality is, and again, I didn't even have this on my questions, but I think it's a really interesting topic. The cannabises that sell the best across Canada, the cannabises that sell the best across US to date and historically have been the strongest ones.
of course,
And but so and you're saying that's almost in your opinion for what would be the best, that doesn't even make sense. Like in your mind, you're like, that's crazy that you would only measure THC to say what
no,
that flavor
no,
matters and effect matters so much more. So how do you see that's going to change? so that the general consumer becomes more connoisseur, understanding the subtleties of what makes for good cannabis compared to a number.
Make babies and don't be shy about consuming cannabis around your kids. And by the time they grow up, the usage of cannabis will have been normalized. And when it's normalized, the little human creature will start interesting itself in other things than potency, just like it was for alcohol.
Well,
It's the same thing. It's the same thing repeating. When alcohol was outlawed and it became legal again, it took 15 years for beer to become popular again, right? So you literally need a whole generation with people, so the minors, the kids, seeing adults around consume responsibly in a normalized way without a stigma for those kids to grow up, and then expertise and more appreciation will come out of it. So realistically speaking, I mean, in Canada we're probably 10 years away from really having the segments of lower THC outperform the high THC, I would say.
hmm. And yeah, I mean, again, I don't know. You know, I think sometimes people, a lot of people, they're smoking so many people just to get high, you know, especially young people. And as they get older, maybe their tastes change. They don't like, oh my God, I don't want a 30% THC. I don't want that. But younger people, they're in the same way that, you know, you will never shotgun a beer, but
I mean,
teenagers do.
I'm sure I could get you to shotgun a beer in the right
Well,
situation,
I mean,
Eric.
yeah, the same thing. And I'll do a dab too, but I don't want to.
No, you don't want to, but it will still happen. You see what I mean?
No,
But
no.
and then again, what are we talking about? Are we talking about actual cannabis consumers in what people tend to think they are, aka for me, I would say more connoisseurs, or are we talking about the
I'm
base
talking about
recreational consumer
percentage of
demographic?
sales that's focused towards potency, which right now it's a massive percentage of sales. If it's not over 25%, the SQDC doesn't even barely want to look at it because everything strong
Of course.
sells.
But that's the same concept as, so let's say alcohol, right? Now it's more standardized
Sure.
at beer, and but if we are all being honest, what is the actual percentage of consumer that consume beer and wine only for the taste? And what is the percentage that one of the big part of consuming this is the effect?
Or to, I mean,
Probably 80
and then
20.
I think again, is there's a middle there where it's both, obviously. So if it was just the
But
fact
it's
that do
an
shots of
acquired taste.
vodka, right?
No, but it's an acquired taste. If what people saw, like nobody likes alcohol when they're born. It's an acquired taste. It's not good, right? People originally start doing it simply for the
Yeah,
effect. So when we're looking at cannabis, the harsh reality, and excuse my French, is most cannabis consumer in the legal market do not give a fuck about cannabis and do not give a fuck about where it comes from, how it was grown, the terpenes, that
very
this,
good.
they don't want to be educated, right? Everybody has so much time in their day and passions. What they want is an effect. They're looking to, the medical effect or the recreational effect. So yes, they're going to buy something that fits their budget. They're not educated that, let's say, different format, like dabbing. That's great. You need so much thing to do a dab, or even just the vapes. The vapes have been clouded so much by the tobacco vapes and nicotine vapes with the popcorn lungs, that there's just still a lot of stigma. And that when that stigma goes away, that's where we'll see ready to go product for those consumer become more refined, a little bit like we see in beers, right? So that will become more accessible. But before that, you need to understand that people are not looking to get educated in
No,
cannabis. They're looking to get the effect.
no, no, I totally agree, and I'm just curious. Again, the question was, and I think you answered it. To like how, because I think your answer was it's a generation away before people don't. They're really looking for a flavor profile, understanding that all of it will do the job. And then,
Of
yeah.
course.
So no, let's just change subjects here because there is a technical question, something I've been talking a lot about recently. I'm going to be writing a lot about recently, and I'm like really fascinated by it, and I have a little bit of a personal story. I've always known about it, but so. Did you ever get your clone for the grow off, the Great Canadian Grow Off? Did that ever happen? Did they send you that clone? Are you growing?
Unfortunately, not.
Okay,
Timelines did not
fine.
align. I could not guarantee I would be able to harvest in
Yeah, yeah,
time. So I said
fine.
next year I would.
Fine. So I have it. I
But
have my Pepe Le Cush. Maybe next time you come over, I'll show it to you. So it's doing really
yeah,
well. I'm really happy. So I was talking to Jair from DLI Lighting, and we were having a chat. And, I tell him I'm doing this thing. He goes, "Oh, let me give you a new LED." So this is before I left for Prague. So I get a new LED. Now I have sand lights. Sand lights are made from Austria. They're really good, LEDs. But I'd had them a long time. Like two of them were 8 years old. Two of them were 4 years old. And I don't say how much I notice. I have a home grow. I got more cannabis than I need. Most of it's pretty good, but I had definitely kind of noticed without really checking a box in my brain to make a change. It's not quite as big and not quite as good as it used to be. Like I remember my crops being quite a bit. I didn't think much about it. I get this light, I fire it up, and I fucking nearly go blind. I'm like, holy shit! This light is so bright. 800 watts. I had two 350, so I had 700 watts versus 800 watts. Night and day. My LEDs had degraded so much that I didn't notice that I had probably at 50% of the light levels of the day that they were new. And this got me onto when I called Jair, I'm like, holy shit, this is crazy. So we ended up having dinner in Prague, and we spent the whole night talking about LED light and spectral degradation and LED degradation warranties for commercial cannabis producers. And he said, if I was a master grower and I got paid based on yield, quality, whatever, the day I go in, I would measure all the LEDs for their efficiency, how strong they are right now. And if they weren't strong enough, I'd make them change their lights, and I would make them have in my contract that the PPFD can't go under a certain amount, or you're judging me on your shit lights. And I was like, fuck. I never thought of this. I never really thought about how, yeah, every year we used to change our HPS. It was just, if you're a professional grower or even a hobby grower, if you were smart, I'd flip it out every year. And every year when I put the new one in, even if it only gone down 10%, I was always believed it was worth the money. When you put in that new Hortilux back in the day and you turned it on, it was fucking bright. It was brighter. And my plants were happy. Anyway, so his story is there's so many LEDs on the market, but in professional horticulture, there's only a handful, 5 or 6 people who sell LEDs in commercial horticulture. There's hundreds, but dozens of kind of known brands. Most of them are like straight Chinese. Like at the trade shows, there are Chinese people from China who are selling their stuff, and that's all great. But he said, you try to get a guarantee from them on anything, you won't. And then he said, I asked him, well, what other companies are giving light degradation warranties in commercial cannabis? And he said none. As far as he knows, none. Maybe some of the big guys who do it in ag will do it, but it's not common practice. And I thought, wow, that's a pretty serious. There's a lot of people who bought their LEDs 4 and 5 years ago and maybe aren't really thinking about they've degraded anywhere between 1 and 5, 6% a year, some of the cheaper ones. And you're going to be in big fucking trouble if you're not changing your entire LED outfit every couple of years if you bought cheap ones. So what's your thought on that, Alex?
well, I mean, yes, of course. I mean, first off, if you're not putting in your contract clause with an LED company anything about spectrum degradation for the warranty, I mean, that's an amateur move. First off, right? Like we're talking millions of dollars for
Yeah, well,
a lot of
a
the
lot of people
facilities.
didn't think of
So
this.
also not proper regulations application in the sense that we need to show we're in control. If you're not checking your lights, how are you in control? So, I mean, you're not in GACP or GMP regulation at that level. You're probably more GPP or a home grower.
Go on.
Um,
Yeah, question.
I would say get your phone, download the application Photon, pay $5, and you have a light reader that does the job for what you need, and just check your
Hold on
light,
a sec. Hold on a sec. What's that? What's that photon? What's it called?
yeah, Photone.
Okay.
And it's like $5 and it does the
I
job.
mean,
Like it's precise
I
within
feel like
50
downloading it
PhD.
right during this podcast. I'm gonna go test it out right away in my grow room. So again, usually it's so I don't know why I ask you questions like it should have been obvious. You're like, what do you mean? It's obvious. It's not obvious to a lot of people. There are so many grows that put up $1 million worth of LEDs with absolutely no thinking about what's going to happen in 5 years. Like how
I mean, but don't, I mean, between you and me, those grows are probably bankrupt now.
well.
Like
I
it's a complete nonsense. Like what do you mean? You're putting up lights thinking they're going to be good indefinitely?
I mean, they just don't think about it. They think it's okay. It's going to be good for the thing. It'll be good for like 5 years. It's
Okay, so if they don't think about their lights breaking, what other things are they not
not
thinking
breaking,
about?
right? There's a
But
big difference between breaking and light degradation. Some of them drop 1% or 0.5% a year. The best ones, let's say, 1% a year. And they say within 5, 6, maybe 7 years, you should change the light because you have to change the whole thing, right? You have to change all
well,
of your lights.
yes, but that's part of shopping for the right lights in the sense, if you understand the relationship
Well,
of the
tell
diode
us
with
what
the
you
heat
did. How
sink,
did
and
you? You guys are switching to LEDs right now, aren't you? Generally,
we are in the process of testing out new LEDs. But yes, the brands that I'm going to be testing out for, I am checking which diodes they're using, how the heat sinks are working, also running the lights. You don't run lights at 100% capacity. The whole point of LEDs, you run them at 70 to make their lifespan go longer. You do include it in the contract to cover a light degradation under the warranty. And most and foremost is the second you start, every year, every quarter, your company is supposed to be setting money aside for in 5 years for when you're going to need new
there you
lights
go.
because it's going to happen anyway. And if you plan it properly, that money that you set aside, you're also supposed to invest along those 5 years to make it fructify. Like there's a whole, you see what I mean? But there's a whole thing missing when you're talking about an LP that did $1 million of buy and that did not look into
It's
this,
so.
right?
I mean, look, this is back to why your company is special. We did a point of view article with you on IPM, and again, it's almost you say things like it's just so obvious, or like anybody would do that. Anyone who wants to run a proper business, why would you, like to have three firewalls for this or so just so you understand, not everyone is really dialed in on running their business perfectly, right?
That's fair, but we're talking about a big one there.
I
Like
know, but the
I
LEDs are new. You know what I mean? This is kind of a new technology, and sometimes when someone wants to buy an LED and it's either $1 million or $400,000, they feel like buying the $400,000 LED that has very similar specs as the $1 million ones on paper makes sense to buy because in X amount of years they can just rebuy that group of lighting in 5 years and they'll have brand new lights again and it'll cost twice as much to buy the good one. Whereas,
I mean, often they're
but
right.
they don't give degradation studies. They don't give the information, so that light will actually degrade faster than they say, the cheaper ones, and lose enough that if you're losing 5% a year in 4 years, you're 20% the light levels. This impacts your grow, and some of them degrade faster than that. Really inexpensive ones can degrade more than
Of
five
course,
percent a year.
it's the relationship of how the heat is evacuated. So just by looking at the heat sink, you already have a good idea, to be honest. And if you're running a high value crop like cannabis, you're making tests on your light. So let's say I would try a Chinese light or whatever. I would run it for 6 months, like at the hardest into the ground in super hot rooms and measure degradation. And if the degradation is reasonable and the price makes sense, and we plan to switch it after 2 years and 3 times, because technology is also advancing so much in LED. It's just like computers. You're buying an LED right now for 400,000. Tomorrow there's one that's better and that the model you just bought just went under. When when manufacturers design a model, they need volume to have discount to be able to have a profit margin. So let's say you design an LED, you're going to need to order like 100,000. So then they load all the suppliers and their salesmen with that unit, and they need to sell before the new one comes in. And it's a race to the finish. And that's the issue also, right? You know there's another one coming. If there's a good deal or something, it's probably the older model because the new one already came out with diodes that are 5 times more efficient. So there's a middle ground to everything that needs to be found. We decided to try multiple brands. Some of them we invested more, some of them we invested less, and we're going to see which model fits the best. And we are aware that in 3 to 5 years, there's probably going to be a complete switch out.
Mm. Well, I'm super interested in the subject right now, and I feel probably 90% of my readers I say have no idea. I don't want to be say that they don't know, but in terms of like to look at it to know if the heat sink is efficient enough, they're certainly not going to buy different units and test them for 6 months in a hot room. If they're hobbyists, you know what I mean. You're going to buy one, and so many people go for the lower, and some of the lower ones I've heard good results. I've had one from the UK from Maxi Bright that they sent me back in the day, and it was quite a not an expensive unit, uh, and it worked amazing. I used it for 2.5 years. I gave it to a friend, and he's. I feel bad, and I think now I gotta give him a call and give him a new light or something because now it's about 5 years old, 6 years old, so it's probably not performing well for him. But it worked amazing for me, you know. So like I said, I'm not saying you have to buy the best one in the market, but I do think when you're like you said, kind of like obviously, if you're the commercial place buying $1 million light of lights, you're going to get a guarantee on light degradation. But like I said, I don't think that's common practice.
Yeah, but good. Let's break it down for your home growers and your viewers, right? So what to understand? First off, there's LED diodes and there's also COBs, chips on boards. So let's say when you see a purple light, a blur pole, often it's because they use single diode. Every diode is going to emit one color, one spectrum of light, right? Light is expressed in wavelength, nanometers. So 660 is red. I think it's 470, that's more the blue. Often, a lot of the cheap lights will only have blue and red, not a complete spectrum. When you talk about diodes, the red ones have been the one that have been pushed the most. So they're the most efficient. They put out a very high amount of lumen per watt. So a lot of the manufacturer are going to put in red diodes to boost the spec of the lights. So it looks good, but it's complete fucking garbage because there's just too much red in it, and that's not good for the plant. You're going to have bleaching, etc. Now, when you're talking about COBs, um, it's basically it's combined on one chip, and that's where you see LEDs emitting more of
Right.
a normal color, right? Not purple. So those are more advanced. Well, I would say that the old school LEDs had single diodes. Now most of the LEDs have COBs with single diodes for certain purpose to equilibrate the spectrum. So those diodes can either be very cheap, come from China. You can literally chat GPT or whatever the different brands of diodes. It's often Samsung, Osram, Epistar, etc. The best quality are often Samsung. Then you need to be sure somehow that the supplier is not using a knockoff. So if you go too much on certain, you know, website where you buy stuff, you could get a knockoff of Samsung COBs, and that's why the light is garbage. Then those diodes, depending how much you drive them, so how much watt per, you can drive a diode to 5 watts, you can drive it to 3 watts, but the higher you drive it, the more heat it's going to emit and the faster it's going to burn and degrade, right? So again, to be cheap and have high spec, you can load the light with a lot of red diodes and boost it to 5 watts to have a light that looks incredible, but it's going to die off quickly. Now, the heat sink, it's pretty much a question of size and shape. A good light is going to be heavier because the heat sink needs enough mass to absorb the heat that is being produced by the diodes and then be released into the air, either passively or with the help of a fan. So if you have high spec on the light and it looks like it's super light, like the weight is super
Yeah,
light,
yeah,
it's not bulky, there's no way that heat can be evacuated fast enough not to damage the diodes, right? So it's just by literally the weight of the light, the actual size, how many diodes and COB they're using, and the brand, you're going to be able to have a good idea. You enter kind of all those metrics into your good old Chat GPT or Copilot. You make comparison with all the lights that you find. But there's also companies that withstood the test of time, right? So there's some Chinese company in LED that are very good entry level position. They started off back in 2010 and they're still alive. There's a reason for that, right? You also want them to deliver, you want them to have customer service, etc. So I would go with trusted name, and there's no need to improvise. Like if you're paying $50 less, it's probably because they cheaped out on some components and you're gonna end up paying the price. Like when you're in the, $200 range for an LED light, yeah, like those 50 or $25 cheaper model, it's for a reason. And if you cheap out, you're gonna get what you pay
All right.
for.
Well, here I'll put you on the spot. So after all your research and your knowledge, what would say the top three brands? Both, if you're looking to buy commercial, but you're at home, you need to buy a light. You really want to get a good light. What are the top three that you would say are worth looking at? I'm not saying the other four, five, and six aren't good, but just give us your top three, unless you really have a
Well,
top three.
unfortunately, I don't deal with homegrown grade lights. Like it's one of the issues. I have commercial lights like at my house or like at the warehouse. I can't even get rid of them because they're just too commercial and people don't want them in their home grow. So it's more what fits your budget and what's the target goal, right?
Oh, you should be a
It's more
politician. I mean, what brands do you think are the strongest brands in making a quality light for commercial grow? What brands would you recommend if people are starting this? I got 500 lights in my grow. I'm looking to switch to LEDs. If I had to
well,
get the
okay.
advice from Alex Gauthier, what would he tell me would be that after all the
So
research he's done?
Black Dog LED is a very solid one.
Okay,
It's the only one with single diodes, but they have a very special spectrum and they probably have the longest lifespan in the entire industry. Like Black Dog is going to cost more, but that light is absolutely
I like
unkillable.
cost more, so
Um, DLI is very good if you get the home model, the Papillon. Their commercial model is definitely not made for home grow. I hope you didn't get the Zenith because that would be why you got blinded when you turned it on. Um,
I it's sitting on the very top of my ceiling, and yes, I have the 800-watt Zenith.
okay, so anyway,
You think it's too strong for
uh,
my home grow? Like,
don't use it over 60%, I would say.
oh, that's a good point. So I have the nice little controller. I could turn it down right away. But it's like a solid 2.5 feet over my canopy.
Yeah, that's too close. You need it 4 feet across above your canopy. It's a commercial light.
Yeah, no,
You're gonna get bleaching everywhere.
I'll let you know. I'll keep you posted.
No, I'm telling you,
I,
it's not meant for that.
Martin,
It's too powerful.
Martin's coming over, but I'm going to turn it down. So there you go.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, so I said DLI, Black Dog LED, Growgenic is one that not many people know, but it is very good. Like they don't market, but it's even hard to find their website, but find them and they have very good lights. Um, who do I like besides that? Grandmaster LED
Okay.
has a very good team behind it. Shout out to Jeremy. He's
Well,
very good, and they have very good. Like if I was a home grower, to be honest, I would probably go with Grandmaster LED because of the spectrum option they offer. So that one is a great product. If I was looking to do a one-time purchase, it would be Black Dog LED. Foch is also very good, but their commercial model doesn't really fit into a home grow, right? Rayon LED is very decent, also very good. Um, Grow Life Science is very good, also.
Kevin, I spoke to him not long
Uh,
ago. He's a cool guy.
what?
I spoke to him not too long ago. He's a nice guy. Well, they're working with Biofloral now. Grow Life
Mm-hmm.
Science. So
Yeah.
I got a chance to talk to him. Yeah. All right. Well,
But as far as under canopy, Favin is very good. Rayon LED, Washen, Grow Life Science also, Growgenics also. So yeah, no,
yeah,
that would be
good.
pretty much a
Okay.
company I
So that's
recommend.
like I said. Thank you. For me, that's super useful. A lot of people out there, they don't know how to test, and knowing something like, again, if they knew you too, and the time and effort and energy that you go into testing things. At the end of the day, I take, even now you told me. So I have Martin Gagnon's coming over. He's bringing me another light today. So I'm gonna call him up and see. Well, what do you have? Like, what's the? Because there's the one I have. You said the name of it. It is Zenith, and then what's the other
Yeah,
one? No.
the Papillon. He's probably bringing you a Papillon because he know the zine it needs a higher ceiling.
Yeah, I don't think he knows, man. I don't know. But as soon as I get off with you, I'm gonna call him. Um, that's amazing. I'll ask you. So we're getting to the end here, and there is one thing. And again, just that I know you're willing to share your knowledge and whatnot. But let's say somebody's thinking about getting into this industry in Canada. They have some money and they have a license, and they're going to start. Or they've just started. Um, what advice would you give them in terms of how to be profitable and to survive in this industry?
Find the right pheno, make sure you're the only one growing it, find the right pipelines to sell it, sign contracts, optimize your process to be as low cost as production, and collect the money.
There you go, everybody. It's that easy. You know?
There's always something that miss along those steps.
Yeah,
Either
if
they have the right
you,
cultivar,
if you
but produce it too high, or
yeah, if I follow your grandmother's recipe perfectly, it still won't taste like your grandmother's dish, you know? So like you said, find the right team, I think probably would be in there and have a passionate team of people who are willing to learn and grow in the business. But what's the next show for you? We said earlier it's going to be the Grow Up, and then anything
yeah,
in Europe.
grow up Vancouver.
What's the next European
Yeah.
show?
Uh, Probably ICBC, for sure Mary Jane. But yeah, I'll be around
I
Germany.
didn't mention to you, but or if I did earlier, that we're going to be firing up a new magazine in South Africa in the next edition.
Well, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Congratulations.
So if yeah, thanks. I'm pretty excited. And if ever when I start traveling down to the South African shows, although they're exporting out, they're not looking to import anything, that's for sure. But it's still an interesting market, and if you could find someone having the show there ever to pay for you to come down to talk, I'm sure that the licensed facilities down there would love to pick your brain.
I would love to go to South Africa. Hey, if someone's offering for me to come, I will
I'm
show
going
up.
in March. I'll talk to the guy. I have, like I said, I have a couple of the writers there are involved with the show. I don't know what they can do or can't do, but like I said, I think bringing in someone who's had so much success in Canada to mentor is a strong word, but to have that ability over a weekend to teach some of your ideologies and methodologies could change their lives. So. So there you go, Alex. That's the end of the podcast. I had other questions for you, but maybe we'll save it for another time. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm glad we were
My
able to do
pleasure.
this.
Thank you for having me, and it was a great time. We have so much to talk about, and it's super interesting as always to exchange with you. Thank you for everybody to for listening, and yeah.
Yeah, and thank you again. It's always a humbling experience when I talk to you because it seems I never bring a subject to you you don't have the answer, and more times than anyone I know, without doing it rude, you put me in my place. I'll say something, you'll say something, I'll be like, oh yeah, okay, I forget it. You're right, So anyway, it's always amazing. I said you're for your not that many years on this planet. You might be the one of the smartest guys I know when it comes to cannabis growing and running the business, and you and David are absolutely um two people that I really, really, really appreciate, and I'm glad that I'm your friend. So anyway, hopefully lots of people watch this podcast, and I enjoyed it, and let's see each other soon.